Hey guys, what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight's going to be movie content. For today's video, we're going to be talking about my favorite movies that I watched in 2021. I watched a total of 120 movies. I tried to narrow it down to 10, but I could not, so we are going to talk about 11 movies, which is an oddly specific number, but I had a hard time making that top 10. In order to make this list, I did not include rewatches in the runner-ups. I wanted every movie I talk about in this video to be a new to me movie. When I say best movies of 2021, these didn't necessarily come out in 2021. In fact, I think only 2 movies on this list for sure came out in 2021, possibly three, but for sure 2. Everything else came out before. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So at number 11, sometimes 10, and sometimes 9. 9 through 11, I can never figure out what order I want to put these films in. So for the 3 films I'm about to mention, they're not in a particular ranking just because I can never decide. So the first one I want to mention is Studio Ghibli's Pom Poko. This film is about a clan of raccoons that are shapeshifters, and one day they notice humans are destroying their forest, so for the rest of the movie they are trying to scare these humans away. This is by the same man who made Grave of the Fireflies, so I went into this thinking it was going to be devastating and heartbreaking. And yeah, near the end there, it kind of was sad seeing what their result was, but as a whole, this movie was actually kind of hilarious. For a movie that had such serious subject matter, I was actually kind of shocked how much I was laughing, and it really helped that the film knew when to be funny and when to be serious. Like, it balanced itself out really well. I really liked the visuals, especially during that parade scene with the music. The music was like kind of spooky, and I just really liked the message of this movie, which is basically, protect nature, because that's someone's home. It may not be our home, as in the humans, but like that forest still belongs to someone else. It still belongs to these animals that are important to our ecosystem. And then maybe I just held it like dear to my heart because, I'm a zoology major, like animals are my thing, so therefore I was like, oh my god, protect them. I wasn't expecting so many balls in this movie, which I know sounds really weird out of context, but just trust me. There's a lot of balls. These animals are ballsy. And it's definitely one of my higher rated Studio Ghibli movies. I know I'm kind of like vague when I'm talking about this film, but the one it's kind of like tied with, I just can't decide which one I really like better. It's tied with the next film I'm going to talk about, which is My Neighbor Totoro. I know Totoro's like the staple of Studio Ghibli, but for some reason it took me just years to finally see it. And I also love this film. It's one of my favorite Ghibli films. This movie is no plot, just vibes. Like, there's no villain, there's nothing too catastrophic that happens. And yet, it's one of the cutest movies I have ever seen. I was smiling the whole time I was watching this movie. And it's understandable why My Neighbor Totoro is the way it is, because I was reading about it. This did premiere immediately after Grave of the Fireflies, because Studio Ghibli thought Grave of the Fireflies would be too sad. So this movie was created in order to create a pick-me-up, and it's the perfect comfort movie. I like the fact there's no plot to this, and I feel like we need more films like this. The song at the end of the film is catchy. I still sing that song to myself. And again, maybe it just goes back to my childhood and like my zoology major. I've always loved movies with animals at the forefront, or maybe just nature, I should say, at the forefront, just because Totoro is more of a spirit than he is an animal. He's the perfect comfort character, and it's weird. The reason I compare this to Pom Poko, it's just really weird because I can't decide which one I like better. They're 2 completely different movies, and I still think about both of them. It's weird because I like the message of Pom Poko more than I like Totoro's message, but I also can't get over how cute My Neighbor Totoro is and like how it is the perfect pick-me-up movie. Pom Poko is funnier and prettier to look at, but Pom Poko still had scenes where I felt things other than happiness, whereas My Neighbor Totoro, I was basically happy throughout the entire film. I couldn't stop smiling. It's a film for children, and yet I felt at one with my inner child while watching it, which sounds really fucking corny, I know, but like, it was fun to feel like a kid again. I just couldn't stop. My face hurt at the end of the movie because I just couldn't stop smiling. And like, another reason it goes back to Pom Poko for me is because like I rated Pom Poko higher. I'm pretty sure I gave Pom Poko like 4 out of 5 stars, or 4.5 out of 5 stars, My Neighbor Totoro, I gave about 4 out of 5 stars, but My Neighbor Totoro is the one I'm constantly thinking back to. It's the one I remember the most whenever I want to calm down. Like, that's the film that comes to mind first. Pom Poko is one of those movies, I think, where I really enjoyed it during my initial sitting, but I'm not in a rush to rewatch it. Whereas My Neighbor Totoro, I can rewatch this whenever. Both these movies sit at spots 10 and 11 because one day I'm like, no, My Neighbor Totoro is at number 10, but on other days I'm like, no, it's Pom Poko. So trying to write the list for this video was difficult. But yes, Pom Poko and My Neighbor Totoro both made it to my top favorites, the top 11 films I watched in the year. Two completely different stories, but still great films. So number 9 is another film where I can never figure out where I want to place this. So that would be Demon Slayer Mugen Train, which is one of the films on this list that came out in 2021. No, technically, actually, thinking about it, I think only one film on this list came out in 2021. Because this technically came out in Japan in 2020, but it came to the North American continent in 2021, in April 2021. Unfortunately, you can't just go straight into this movie. In order to understand it, you do need to watch season 1 of the anime. But Demon Slayer is a manga / anime about a 15-year-old boy named Tanjiro. He is living in the 1910s era, I think, of Japan. Demons are running amok. Demons eat humans. He is told of this legend and told that they are scary. And then one night an accident happens and then his sister is turned into a demon. So now he's trying to spend the rest of the story figuring out a way to make her human again and to defeat the head demon. So one of the reasons I really like this story is I just really love all the characters. Admittedly, I don't find the plot of this anime some like genius plot. It is, I don't want to say basic, but like I have read better. I'm really into like complicated stuff. I have read better. I have read more complicated things, but sometimes I don't want a complicated story. Sometimes I want something simple and easy to get through, which is what Demon Slayer is. It's one of those stories you go to after just finishing a movie that was incredibly dense. It was plot twist after plot twist. One of those movies you have to pay attention to every detail because every detail is important. I would watch Demon Slayer afterwards to wind down. Despite my thoughts on the plot itself, one of the reasons this is one of my favorite stories is just because I love these characters so much. One of my favorite things about Tanjiro is that he does have a good moral compass. He does have a strong opinion on what is wrong, what is right, but he also feels for characters. Like, one of my favorite tropes is the sympathetic antagonist. I'm always here for a good sympathetic antagonist, and there's a lot in Demon Slayer. In Tanjiro, he sits there, he doesn't excuse their actions by any means, but he sits there, he listens, we feel with him. And I just love that about Tanjiro as a character, and of course there's so many side characters I love, and it's just a good time. And also, it's Demon Slayer, so the animation is top notch. I think that's one of the reasons this anime kicked off so well, was just because how unbelievable the animation could be. It's one of those movies where I was so excited for it. I went in thinking I was gonna love it, and then I did. It made Demon Slayer even better because season 1, like I noticed in season 1, it got a little formulaic, and I was wondering like where it was going, but then I was told like season 1 was just set up for the main story. I could see that with this movie. It's really pushing the plot forward. There's one character where I fell in love so fast. Like, usually I need some extra character development in order to like latch on to characters, but this one, 2 minutes into the film, and I was absolutely obsessed with Rengoku. I was so pumped up for those fight scenes. Like, my heart was racing while I was watching it in the theater. I was unfortunately spoiled for the end. Like, I wasn't like explicitly spoiled, but manga readers also don't know how to shut the fuck up. So even though they didn't say what the ending actually was, they said enough for me to infer what was gonna happen. And my prediction was correct, but I still cried. It was weird because I'm like, well, I know this is gonna happen. And yet I was still like kind of shocked that it happened. Like, I had chills down my spine because the voice acting during that scene was insane. And honestly, like, my emotions were all over the place for this movie because at first I was like really happy and laughing because the beginning was funny. Then I got scared at one point. Then I got angry at one point. Then I found myself crying. Then I found myself bouncing in my seat because the fight scene was like insane and some of the prettiest animation I've ever seen. And then in the end I was crying again. Like, how do you mess with my emotions that much? It's just a really good story. Again, I've read and seen better plots, but I just love these characters so much. And again, sometimes I just want a simple story, and Demon Slayer gives me that. And it's a fun time. But yeah, if you haven't seen Demon Slayer, I do recommend it, and I actually want to get to the manga one day. At number 8, this is actually when my list does get more concise. For these, I was able to rank. But number 8, we have a horror film, and that's The Conjuring 2. I haven't been this scared over a film in quite a while. Like, at one point, I was literally shaking in my seat. I was looking at the film through my fingers, which I have not done since I was a literal child. Like, halfway through the movie, I had to pause it and take a 10-minute breather because I was so overwhelmed. And then once the movie was over, I was like peeking in my room to make sure those weird shadows were in fact shadows, nothing more. I'm just amazed that James Wan can have such a hold on people's emotions and just the way he can manipulate fear in his audience. One of the reasons this film works so well is because he sets you up to be scared for certain scenes, and then nothing happens. So as you're calming down, that's when the scary thing appears. Like, it happens when you're not expecting it, so you're choking on what would have been your sigh of relief. Like, it's kind of like he's saying to us, I'll tell you when to be scared, but I won't tell you when you should be scared. I'm also realizing I forgot to tell you guys what this movie is about. Did I tell you what any of these movies were about? But this movie is about this family. I think it takes place in the 70s. This family living in England, and one day their daughter gets possessed, so they call the Warrens to go over and try to scare this demon away. Something I actually appreciated about this movie, because in so many like based on a true story ghost stories, the people just take it as they come. Like, outsiders either believe nothing or they believe too quickly. And something I appreciate about the way the Warrens were portrayed in this movie is that they wanted to help the family, and they sat there and listened. So they didn't like dismiss them by any means, but they were also suspicious. They didn't believe every word they heard. They were suspicious. They critically thought about their situation. They took the time to evaluate their evidence. And it's just nice watching a ghost story where people actually like critically think their way through to the conclusion. They don't just like either dismiss it or, you know, believe everything they hear, because when I've noticed in films where when people believe everything they hear right away, things get solved rather quickly and easily. And I like when there's problem solving involved, which thankfully this movie had, making all these plot points more intense. It was a really fun film. I'm glad I finally got to see it. I was horrified. It's definitely one I'm going to be watching again in the future. And you know what? It kind of had some cute romance. Like when What's-His-Face was singing to Vera Farmiga, that one Elvis song, Can't Help But Falling in Love. We love to see it. At number 7, we have an anime movie called Children of the Sea. This is about a girl who goes to the aquarium where her father works. She notices 2 boys swimming in the tanks with the manatees. She comes to learn that despite being human, they were raised by these manatees, so that's why they could swim so easily, and they could even hold their breath for a long amount of time underwater. She spends the summer hanging out with them, and then she realizes there's something that needs protection. So I initially went into this movie because, again, my love for animals. I thought it was such an interesting idea, like humans raised by manatees. The main reason though was actually the art style, because I don't know, there's just something so gripping about these character designs, and like the way this movie was made reminds me of like a paintbrush style. I don't know if that's like the technical term, that's just what it reminds me of, and it's like something I've never seen before. I mean, some characters were kind of ugly, like if you zoomed in too much on their face, I was kind of like, please get that away from me. But there were also just some frames that were absolutely mesmerizing, and I could not look away from the screen. When it comes to the plot of the film itself, like the first part was really cute. It was just a cute coming of age story, just 3 friends hang out in the summer before school. The last half of this film, more so like the last 30 minutes, is what made this film be in my top films of the year. I actually have no idea what the hell was going on during that last part of the film, but I was still incredibly enthralled. Like, usually when I don't know what's going on, I'm like, okay, fuck this movie. This movie's terrible. But there's just something about this one where I just could not look away from the screen. I didn't know what was happening to the girl. I didn't know what was happening to the boys. But just the animation was kind of insane. The graphics just kept getting better and better as the film was going on. I don't know, like, why were there planets involved? Why was just a whale just swimming? I don't know, but it was still cool. What was happening to the boy during that one scene? Why wasn't he talking? Why was he just staring? I don't know, but I'm still having a lot of fun. Since the last part of this film does get very confusing, I don't know if I would just recommend this to everyone. If you want to see gorgeous animation, then yes, watch it. But when it comes to like the actual writing and the plot, I don't know, because that ending gets really weird. But just my enthrallment level is like, that's why this movie is one of the top movies I watch, because I still can't stop thinking about how much fun I had watching that last part. And I want to tell you guys my interpretation, but that would be spoiling, so I will not say it. But it stuck with me, And now we're gonna move on to number 6. At number 6, we have Midsommar. This movie is about a woman who's not really doing well in life. Her boyfriend's kind of an asshole, but her boyfriend needs to go to some town in Sweden to see a tradition that they hold for his anthropology class. She decides to tag along, and as the movie goes on, you realize something ain't right. I was actually a little worried going into this film. It's by the same guy who made Hereditary, and people always compare the two. An unpopular opinion, but I thought Hereditary was so boring, so I was really worried going into this one, but I watched it anyway for the Halloween season, and let me tell you, this movie did not disappoint. I had a grand time watching this. The setup was perfect. Like, it looks like some utopia, but you know, like that weird feeling, small feeling deep inside you. You know something's slightly off with the way everyone's acting. Like, everyone's just a little too happy. They're a little too old-fashioned. The cinematography in this movie was amazing. Like, I loved this is actually just coming to mind now. I didn't really notice it while watching the movie itself. But, like, I loved all the bright colors that was involved with the cult. Again, like, because of that setup. The bright colors is to make you think, like, it's some happy utopia. But deep down inside, you know it's not. But then before they get to Sweden, the colors were very dull. Like, all the rooms were always shaded. Some of the camera angles, like some of the symmetry in this movie was so satisfying to look at. My favorite frame, though, was in the beginning when she's talking to her boyfriend. So Florence Pugh is facing us, but we could still see her boyfriend. So his body is off screen, but the reason he's facing us is because we can see him in the mirror that's next to Florence Pugh. I just thought that was such an interesting way for characters to have that conversation and for the audience to be in on the conversation. And characterization, like the characterization in this movie is so good. Like the boyfriend, I remember thinking like within seconds of meeting the boyfriend, I'm like, this guy's kind of an ass. Like, am I supposed to be rooting for this couple? But then as the movie goes on, you realize, oh, he's supposed to be an asshole. Like, they captured that so well. And Florence Pugh's character, like, just her trauma was set up really well. It kind of, like, smacks you in the face in the beginning of the movie. But, like, it's just set up so well where you can't help but feel sorry for her, which really emphasizes how much of an asshole her boyfriend is. You could see how scared she is, how vulnerable she is. How she just wants someone to love her, which to me, just like knowing what I do know about cults, I'm not like an expert here, but just knowing what I do know, like that makes her, what's the word I'm looking for? That makes her like a perfect candidate for cults. She's the exact type of person cults would target. Not saying it's her fault, I'm just saying like she is unfortunately the perfect victim for a cult to drag in. The use of foreshadowing in this film was incredible in both the obvious and the not so obvious ways. One of the obvious ways was that tapestry that they see when they first get to Sweden. See, that one, initially I was kind of like pissed off about that because it's like, why did you just tell us the whole story? But then as you watch the film, it's like, it was obvious foreshadowing. Like, it happens, but not in the way you think it does. Like, I was expecting it to happen with two different characters, but then it ended up happening with two characters I never would have suspected. So that's what I mean by like obvious, kind of obvious foreshadowing. But then there was also like the discreet foreshadowing. Like you could see, and obviously I didn't know this while watching the movie. It wasn't until after and I was reading about the behind the scenes stuff. But when Florence Pugh is in her room in the beginning of the movie, like her room back in the States, she has a picture of a bear set up above her bed. When I was initially watching the film, like I didn't think anything of it. I didn't even remember there was a bear until I went back to it. And now knowing what I know, I'm like, oh my god, that's kind of creepy. So just incredible use of obvious foreshadowing and then incredible use of discreet foreshadowing. I thought this movie had incredible use of like shock value and discomfort. I mean, I was so skeeved out by some scenes. There was like one scene where I knew exactly what was gonna happen. And yet still, the way they portrayed it, I was still kind of like screaming at my TV and shocked. It's like, why am I shocked about something I knew was gonna happen? But like, it was just, this movie was just so uncomfortable, but in the best way possible. Like, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable, and he did his job. And I found the ending to be interesting, because I remember when the movie came out, and a lot of people on Twitter were calling this like the ultimate girl boss movie, but then I watched the film, and that's not how I viewed her character at all. I don't think she's a girl boss. I just think she's a woman who left one abuser and joined the arms of another abuser. I couldn't believe people thought that was a girl boss moment and that they didn't see her, you know, leaving one shitty person and entering the arms of multiple shitty people, because cults are full of a lot of shitty people. And I guess it kind of means that this movie portrayed a cult so well that even the audience fell for it. The most embarrassing part of this film, though, is that I was watching it while I was home alone, and, you know, not knowing there was going to be a scene where you open the doors and there's like 10 women hand in hand, all naked, and you see everything. And I wasn't expecting there to be a scene where there's a dick flapping around. And of course, that's when my parents come home. So I had to like pause the movie and kick them out of the living room. I'm like, get out, get out. You can't see this. And like all the women are screaming and moaning. It was so uncomfortable. And then my dad decided to go to my mom and tell her I was watching porn. So thanks. That's embarrassing. But yeah, I was so shocked about how much I love this movie. I think this film was just a great example of showing what a cult is actually like. And it's just, this movie is kind of just insane, which I know is a word I've been using a lot in this video, but I still just can't get over how good this movie is. At number 5, we have a movie that took me way too long to see, but that is Knives Out. This film is about a woman who works for a very rich family taking care of the rich author grandpa. One day there is a mishap, so in order to protect her, he does kill himself, and now a detective is on the case thinking it was murder, and she's trying to deter anything that may be evidence against her. This is a murder mystery, so I'm a little scared to talk about it just because this is it's easily spoiler territory because every little detail is important and like a plot twist of its own. I will try my best though. One of the first impressive things I noticed about this film is that despite there being so many characters, each character had their distinct personality, and sometimes they were polar opposites of each other, which I thought was interesting. Like that one girl from 13 Reasons Why, she played like a raging leftist. Then there was that one guy from It, he played like an alt-right kid, and like their interactions were always funny because like one would say something, the other said the exact opposite purposely to piss each other off, so those were fun interactions. But despite having totally different personalities, they all had one thing in common, which was the money and the dead grandpa's will. Despite them all kind of hating each other, they all came together for that. And they were trying to get so much out of Marta, who's our main character, and even like the people who were the kindest to her would turn their backs on her, which really showed that none of these characters cared about her, despite what they said. And it also shows that you really have to pay attention to their words, because so many little details always came back. The littlest details are so important, and there's so many side stories, but they all come together so well at the end. And I was just constantly at the edge of my seat watching this. The funniest thing about this too, I kind of figured out right away who the murderer was gonna be. Like the moment the character was introduced, I'm like, yeah, they did it. But just the way this movie is written, like I predicted it correctly, but as the movie went on and more details came out, I actually doubted myself to the point that when it was revealed I did in fact predict correctly. I was shocked. And I said this in the last video where I talked about this in one of my movie wrap-ups, but this movie has inspired me to become smart, because you know how smart and clever you have to be to write something like this? Like there's just so many little details that I wouldn't even have thought would be important were, just because, you know, you mention these little details in any other book, any other movie, and it's just to add to the characterization, which granted, yeah, it added to characterization in the story, but then like later you find out that was an important clue to who the murderer was, and it was just bonkers. This movie's absolutely bonkers. And I know there's a Knives Out 2 coming out, and I cannot wait because I need more murder mysteries like this. Number 4, we have another anime movie, and that will be Violet Evergarden, the movie. Just like Demon Slayer Mugen Train, in order to understand this movie, you do need to have watched the 13-episode long anime. So the original anime takes place in a fictionalized world that's heavily inspired by post-World War I Europe, and it's about this girl who fought in the war as a child. Now that the war is over and her major is nowhere to be found, so the major's friend takes her in, and he works for a letter company. So back in the day, they used to hire people to write letters for others because so many people could not read or write. And she wants to become one of these dolls, which is what they call themselves, in order to learn what the phrase "I love you" means. And let me tell you, that anime is a tear jerker. If you want to see something depressing, that is the anime for you. I mean, I cried because I was so sad, but I would also cry because of how happy I was. it was a punch in the gut. So I went into this movie a little scared. Guys, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I sobbed my eyes out at the end. This movie gets 5 out of 5 just due to pure enjoyment. I don't really have any critical thoughts about this, and it's like hard to talk about just because so much spoiler territory if you haven't watched the anime. The animation is beautiful. The voice acting was great, which is the reason I cried so hard. And then the ending, I kind of have mixed emotions about, but despite the ending not going the way I wanted it to, it was still so undeniably cute that like I forgave them. Like my heart melted because of how happy the ending made me. I mean, there's questions I still have because I feel like Violet Evergarden's story is not completed. Like, I feel like they could do more. Also, given how mysterious Violet Evergarden is as a character, I could see why the movie didn't give us that. So despite wanting more answers, I think it was a smart writer's choice to not give those answers, just to keep up with the characterization. And yeah, I wish I could go into more detail with this movie, but I can't because I don't want to spoil anything. But the anime, I highly, highly recommend. And it's just because her character development it's so beautiful to see. I've never cried so hard for something, and usually when I cry for things, you know, I just tear up a bit. But like I had tears streaming down my face. There was one episode where I was actually sobbing and gasping for air, which happened with this movie. I was sobbing and gasping for air because of how much it like punched me in the heart. And what was actually nice about this movie, they grabbed aspects from the anime in order to make them more connected. And it was nice because I feel like in the anime, because the anime is kind of episodic, it's not necessarily one linear plot. It was nice getting more answers and more complete stories for characters that were introduced in the anime, but because of the episodic nature, we never saw them again. Everything related to Violet Evergarden is on Netflix if you guys want to check it out, which I highly recommend that you do. Let me know down below if you cried just as hard as I did. And if you're an Attack on Titan fan, Violet Evergarden is played by the same girl who voices Mikasa Ackerman. Number 3, we have another Studio Ghibli movie, and that is Howl's Moving Castle. This is about a woman who pisses off a witch, so the witch curses her to be an ugly old woman, and then one day she comes across this moving castle, and the owner of it is Howl. He is a wizard, he could turn into like this bird thing, and it is their adventures from there. This movie is incredibly charming. There is something about Howl that I love so much. He could be like a spoiled brat, but he's just so happy, and he's so dramatic. Like that whole scene with his hair was so funny. And my thoughts on this movie is like Violet Evergarden the movie all over again. I have nothing critical to say. I rated this movie so highly purely for vibes only. It's such a feel-good movie. It's a perfect movie to watch during the fall season, I think, because I consider this one of my like spooky season movies just for the fall vibes. Something about it just made me want to fall in love. I watched it in English, and Christian Bale as Howl is like kind of what made that character for me, because of that one scene where he first meets Sophie and then what he says to her.
That's my girl.
God is a cruel, cruel man for making me fall in love with a fictional character. And I literally have nothing else to say about this movie. Just good vibes all around. It had like the cutest, perfect, happy ending that I was hoping it would have. I mean, I don't want to be cursed like Sophie, but other than that curse, like I'm kind of jealous of her life because now she has a man like Howl in her life. Like, and I don't, because again, God is a cruel, cruel being for making me fall in love with men that don't even exist. Like, what is stopping men from being like Howl? So 5 out of 5, nothing critical, just vibes. We love to see it. Sometimes I don't want to think about a movie critically. Sometimes, you know, I'm gonna give a movie 5 out of 5 just simply because it made me feel good. Number 2, we have a Pixar movie. This was like the one movie that came out in 2021, and it is Luca. This is about a boy named Luca who lives in Italy. He is a sea monster, but when he walks out of the water, he becomes human. He meets a boy named Alberto, and together they swim to a town and live in the town as humans. I remember when this movie was rumored to come out like years ago, I was so excited because I love the Italian culture. My maternal grandma was born in Italy. She was born in Naples, and she was very, even after moving to the States, she was very like at one with the culture still. I learned so much from her. I felt like I was with my grandma again, and that's why I rated this movie so highly. It is a very simple story, which I know critics were like raging on when this movie came out, and I don't understand why. Like again, like with Demon Slayer, sometimes I don't want a complicated story. Sometimes all I want is something simple, and that's what Luca gave me. It's a really cute coming of age story between 3 friends because Luca and Alberto meet the one girl whose name I can't remember, and it was just fun to watch. And you know, it reminds me of my own childhood and hanging out with friends in the summer. And it reminds me of my grandma. So my paternal grandmother, did I say maternal in the beginning? I don't remember, but she's my paternal grandmother. So my paternal grandmother was the only grandparent I've ever met. So I was really close to her, especially because I'm the baby of the family, and you know how like grandparents treat the babies of the family. I was about to turn 21 when my grandma unfortunately passed away. I unfortunately was not there. I could not go to the funeral. She died during my study abroad program, so I was on the other side of the world. So, and like to this day, it still pains me that I couldn't go to her funeral. You know, like not to be like too personal with a bunch of strangers here, but like crying. I'm like kind of starting to cry thinking about it. But you know, I just really miss her. So like this movie reminded me of, I'm fucking crying. Oh my god. Anyway, so this movie like reminded me of her. Like it was nice hearing the Italian language. They were playing music that would like remind me of my grandma, and it's like, I'm fucking crying. This is embarrassing. But it reminded me of my grandma, and it was like nice having those like childhood memories come back because I just loved her so much. And it's just a new comfort movie now. This is embarrassing. Oh my god, I didn't mean to cry in this video. So this movie just has like a huge sentimental impact on me. So that's why it's like one of my top 3 films of the year. Wow, okay, whew, I wasn't expecting to cry. But moving on a more like critical point, I guess. Just like some funny side notes, like knowing Italian, it did help me understand some of the words they would use. It's like, oh wow, all those Italian classes I took in high school and college are finally coming in handy because of this film. And it just makes me incredibly happy. Like that ending was like a punch in the gut, but in the happy way, not in a sad way. I sob whenever I watch it. I mean, it's a Pixar movie. I'm always crying in Pixar movies, but there's something about this one. Like when I watch people react to movies, like some other Pixar movies I just seen so many I don't cry anymore, but with this one, no matter how many reactions I've watched, I always cry at the end. And it's because of that music too. Like that music is just so beautiful and just so good. And this movie at the end of the day is just a big comfort movie, constantly thinking about it. I know like in one of my wrap up videos I said I like My Neighbor Totoro better than this one. But upon thinking about it, and upon thinking about like how movies have really affected me over the year, like this one I'm definitely rating higher because they're both comfort movies, but this one I would go back to more. Number 1, my favorite movie of 2021 was Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke. This is about a boy named Ashitaka who becomes cursed, so he leaves his land to protect them. And he enters a forest where there's another human named San, and she's protected by the animals of the forest and the spirit. But then there's also this other clan full of humans, and like she's like the antagonist of the story. She's trying to protect the humans, but the humans and the animals don't get along. It's very much like a human versus nature story, and it is just so good. I am of the opinion this is way more captivating and better than Spirited Away because I like to be contrarian. I loved all the characters in this film, like especially San and Ashitaka, but I even liked the main antagonist. I thought she was very complex because yeah, like she's evil in the sense she wants to like hurt the animals and get rid of nature and build her clan, but at the same time you saw how she treated the people of her clan, and she treated them so well. She was giving homes to people who needed it. She was helping those who were hungry. So it's and in both sides too, like, you know, some of the animals that San was trying to protect, some of them weren't good either. Some of them did bad actions as well. And it's just one of those movies that kind of show you that each side has good and bad people. And just like with Pom Poko, I feel like this movie has a very important message about nature. Like sometimes humans destroy nature and we are terrible for that, and we're still doing it. The movie was made in the 90s and we still have this problem today. And again, as a zoology major who loves animals and nature, this is important to me because of that. Like the main message was we need to protect all of our surroundings. We need to protect nature, but we should also protect people too, like in the, you know, in the antagonist point of view. And I could just easily lead that to like, hey, in real life we should protect the ecosystem. Like everyone is important. It's not just one thing or the other. And another thing, like Hayao Miyazaki, like he doesn't smack you in the face with his lessons. Like they're not like in your face, and he's not like screaming at you to agree with him, but they're not exactly discreet either. Like he doesn't assume his audience is stupid. Like he knows how smart his audience is. He knows how capable we are. And I like that he doesn't hold our hand through it. He doesn't talk down to us. And he just has a way of taking such a serious subject matter and turning it into a fun adventure. You feel for all the characters. Like when San was in distress, I was in distress. When Ashitaka was pumped up and ready to go, I was pumped up and ready to go. And even sometimes for the antagonist, sometimes I was like kind of on her side. Like I would agree with her about certain things. When her people were angry about something, I got angry about something. Again, like Hayao Miyazaki, having our emotions in a chokehold. And when it comes to like my corny opinion, this movie has one of the best ships I've ever seen. This is when romance peaked. That scene where San was holding the sword to Ashitaka's neck, and Ashitaka's response to that. Twilight could never, okay? Best romance ever. I don't know why we keep fighting about ships and about the best canon ships when San and Ashitaka are right there. And it's so weird thinking about all the other fandoms I'm a part of, like all my favorite canon ships and all my favorite non-canon ships. They have the San and Ashitaka like dynamic. I don't know what it is that I love so much about that. I personally think romance writers should just pack up and go home because they will not be able to beat San and Ashitaka's dynamic. But I just truly cannot stop thinking about this film. It's my favorite Studio Ghibli film. I can't wait for my next rewatch. The music is stunning. The Legend of Ashitaka is one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever heard. And Ashitaka is just, he's such a good protagonist. I love how caring he was for everyone. And it's not like, he wasn't like automatically mad at the humans because, you know, of who their leader was. Like he had his opinions about the antagonist, but he didn't blame the humans by any means. And there's plenty of scenes where he's even helping them and working together with them. I just love calm and understanding characters like that. And it's so, I have no words. Like it's just so good, and I fell in love with this movie, and I wish there were more movies like this. It's honestly one of my favorite films of all time. I want San and Ashitaka tattooed on my body. I already have a hoodie. I just bought a tapestry the other night, but I want on my body, but I want them tattooed on my body because for some reason whenever I love something so much, it needs to be on my body. We have finally made it to the end of this video. If you've lasted this long, thank you so much for watching, because I know this is a lot. I don't even want to know how long my I don't even want to know how long my raw footage is. I'm a little scared for that because I've been filming for quite a while. But let me know down below what some of your favorite films are that you watched in 2021. I'm always here for a good movie recommendation. If you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. And without further ado, I'm gonna peace out and I'll see you guys later. Ciao a tutti.